Live once again from Wellington, New Zealand, it's Malignant Bear, featuring me, JD Grospitz. Hello everyone, and welcome to the stream. Tonight we're continuing our playthrough of Please Be Happy. It's a safe-for-work, wholesome yuri visual novel by Studio Élan. This made my Game of the Year list last year, and we got some requests to play through the entire thing on stream, and we're going to honor that. Well, sort of. We're only going to play through one of the major routes, and we're getting close to that decision. So, more details on why we're streaming a visual novel can be found in the description of this. But I want to use this to focus on what we're actually getting to in terms of the game. Previously, Miho, our main character, the fox girl, was a several hundred-year-old gumiho, a Korean fox mythical creature. In Korean mythology, for those who aren't aware, gumiho are monsters. Miho herself is so unfamiliar with who she is, what she is, that she did not know that. She found that out in the last stream, finding a exhibit all about gumiho in the museum in Wellington, where she is. She's finally settled down in Wellington, and she's made some friends and some connections and has a job. And she is slowly but surely learning to be human. The big twist, though, in the previous stream was that she found a connection between this exhibit and a person who was nice to her hundreds of years ago when she was just a regular fox in Korea. And she also met another gumiho who is rather hostile to her. It's the first other one she's ever met. That is towards the end of episode 3 of this series, so be curious about that. But we're going to be continuing from that point. We stopped.
I needed that break. Back to it.
We stopped deliberately. Thank you, Mr. Kim. We stopped deliberately at a point where we could choose what we were doing. And it's an interesting one because we don't actually really have a choice. We are here on the map. This is the map for our game area here in Wellington. And as you can see, these are all the different places we can go. Anytime there's an actual event at one of these, there will be a little face, and you can see then what you have to do and all that, or who will be there for that event. In this case, all of these are about passing time, so you can check out any of them and see what's going on. Trying to think what would be a good one here. Let's just go to Cuba Street since the mouse is on it. The bakery on the street is giving away free samples today, so of course I'm sneaking by as many times as I possibly can and filling my pockets with goodies. I just really need to sample it and make sure I like it. Once my pockets are practically stuffed with little puffs of bread, I slide off into an alleyway to sample my spoils in peace. Uh-oh. I hadn't realized these were cream-filled and squishable, and now my pockets are a mess. Well, I pop the one still in my hand into my mouth at least. Luckily, it's really good. Washing my jacket out in the river is probably going to be a little less good. Miho is not the greatest at being a person. So, we know she is several hundred years old. It's kind of vague on how old exactly. Aspen, her friend that we're going to meet here in a second, is a normal human bookworm. Likes being in the library where Miho works and that Juliet owns. And Juliet is a vampire, also several hundred years old, so we'll be meeting them here in a bit. It's a rainy Thursday morning, and the library is as dead as I've ever seen it. Even Aspen didn't come by this morning, simply because she didn't want to get soaked. We'll have to see each other later instead. Part of the Gumiho's curse is that anyone who sees them forgets about them within 24 hours. So she has to see Juliet and Aspen every single day, or they will forget everything about her. As a result, Miho has no other connections, friends, or family anywhere in the world, despite being several hundred years old. The only patrons here are the ones who didn't mind the weather, so I have to make sure they don't drip on any of the books. Before she went to bed for the day, Juliet left a bundle of towels near the door for anyone who needs one. At least it makes my work easier. The slow day means I have extra time to study. She's learning how to read. I'm able to remember most of the letters by now, and even read a few words. I haven't told Juliet or Aspen about my progress because I want to surprise them with it later. After an hour or so, I set aside my pencil and gaze out the window with my chin resting on my palm.
Huh. It stopped.
It's still cloudy outside, but the worst of the rain seems to be over. I get up and walk to the window, looking around at the soggy view. I leap backwards in surprise as something suddenly splats against the glass in front of me.
Whoa!
At first it looks like a puddle of water that's stuck to the window, but then it starts to wiggle. I stare in confusion as a pitiful-looking face forms in the middle, then frowns at me. Suddenly it hits me what I'm looking at. This must be a water elemental. I've never seen one for myself before now. So we are in a fantasy world. There are different creatures, obviously Miho herself. Juliet is a vampire, and there are other things, and they're called fabled. They usually hang out in rivers or lakes, but they'll sometimes come out on a dry land when it's rainy. That must be what this one did. Now that it's stopped raining, though.
Oh no, you could dry up.
Just like a fire elemental can die if its flames go out, a water elemental like this could be in trouble if it doesn't stay wet. The weather might still be damp, but the sun is starting to poke through the clouds.
Okay, wait right there. I'll go find something.
I don't know if it can understand me or even hear at all, but I wave at the window and hold up one finger to try to show I'll be right back. After a quick peek to make sure there's no patrons waiting, I hurry to the kitchen and dig through the cabinets, hoping to find a pot or something that's big enough. The biggest one Juliet has is the one that she uses to make pasta, and even that might be a bit too small. Plus, I'm not sure she'd want the taste of water elemental to be in there every time she tries to make spaghetti.
Where else?
I could just wake up Juliet and ask her, but I should really try to solve this myself before bothering her. Instead, I start hunting through the other rooms for something that might help. There's nothing in the bathroom, nor in the library. When I check the dining room a second time, however, I notice a big bowl on top of a shelf I hadn't seen before.
Perfect.
I have to stand on one of the chairs to reach it, but I grab the bowl and fill it half full with tap water before hurrying back to the window. The water elemental is still stuck there, like a very sad bumper sticker. It looks a little smaller, but it ripples with excitement when it sees me, its frown shifting into a watery smile. I head out the front door and skip around to the window, squelching through the wet grass as I go.
Here you go. Come on.
Holding the bowl up to the window, I gently brush the elemental in. To my surprise, it doesn't feel like touching regular water. Instead, it's thicker and a bit sticky, like jelly. The elemental starts to slide into the bowl in bubbles, which I hope is a good sign. It doesn't mix with the water in the bowl, but instead kind of hovers, with water both above and below it. When it gets itself fully into the bowl, it almost fills it up. The water sloshes over the edge and onto my hands, leaving the bowl almost dry except for the elemental itself. The bubbles stop, and an uncertain-looking face peers at me from the bottom.
Alright. Let's get you inside and figure something else out.
I hold the bowl as steady as I can and try not to spill any more as I go back into the library. Just like the guests at the library, I have to make sure not to get any books wet. There's an empty side table near one of the reading chairs, so I set the bowl down there. The elemental seems fine for now, but it looks worried again. It reminds me a lot of Aspen.
I'm not sure what else to try.
I rack my brain, trying to think of something I might have missed in the bathroom or kitchen.
Wait! That bathroom! That's it!
Kneeling down in front of the bowl, I try to reassure the elemental, which is doing its best to stay absolutely still and not slosh.
Okay, don't go anywhere. If you even can.
Running to the bathroom, I plug up the bath and set the faucet to max.
This ought to work for a bit.
Leaving the water running, I go back and retrieve the bowled elemental. This time I end up spilling more of the water, but luckily it only hits the ground. The tub is about half full by the time we get back, which should be perfect. I turn the faucet off and carefully pour the elemental in.
How's that?
There's a stream of excited bubbles.
Cool. Sit tight, and I'll find something we can use to get you back to the river.
More bubbles. Quickly, but not in as big a rush as before, I go to resume my search on the second floor. Because this place is so big, there are still a few rooms I've never seen. I'm pretty sure Juliet wouldn't mind me going in, since I'm trying to help someone out. First room I try is a closet, filled with towels and bed sheets and laundry stuff. The room after that is locked.
That's weird.
I try the knob again in case it was just stuck.
Nope, definitely locked.
I wonder what's in there. I've never paid much attention to that door before since it's so far away from my room. Dropped to all fours and tried to stay under the door, but it's too narrow to see anything. Another nearby door isn't locked, and even better, isn't a closet. Aside from the doorway, which isn't particularly bright, it's pitch black when I step inside. I flick on the light switch, but the bulb fizzles and dies right away. It only takes a moment for my eyes to adjust to darkness, and what had at first been dark smudges turned out to be a bunch of boxes and assorted junk. A storage room. The whole place is covered in dust. I guess Juliet doesn't come in here either. Peeking into one of the boxes, it's filled with old child's toys, like dolls and stuffed animals. Another one has folded up clothes. Just as I'm about to give up and try another room, a half-covered object in the corner catches my eye. A heavy blanket is draped over a glass box, which is full of more random junk. I haul it all out and remove the blanket, smiling at my find. It's a big fish tank, just like the one I saw at the museum.
Score!
After turning it over and shake it out as much of the dust and debris as I can, I triumphantly take the tank to the kitchen sink to rinse it out before hauling it to the bathroom.
Look what I found.
When I set the tank on the edge of the tub, the elemental floats up to the top of the bath and ripples. It takes some maneuvering to hold the tank under the faucet, but eventually I'm able to figure it out and fill it up. Then I use the bowl from before to scoop up the elemental and dump it into the tank.
Perfect, right?
More ripples and bubbles.
Okay, let's get you to the river.
I wrap my arms around the fish tank and lift. And nearly tear my arms off.
That's heavy.
I didn't notice when I was just getting the tank set up, but with all that water in it, it weighs a ton. It's way too heavy for me to carry to the front door, much less all the way to the river.
This could be a problem.
It had seemed so perfect, so lucky. Even after dumping out some of the water, I still can't carry it. Sitting on the floor, I sigh. The elemental floats dejectedly.
Miho? What's going on? I heard the sinks and bathtub running.
Juliet is standing in the doorway as I look up, wearing a face of concern, or wearing a look of concern on her face. Wearing a face of concern on her face.
Hey! It was raining earlier, right? Well, there was this water elemental on the window. I tried to bring it inside so it wouldn't dry up while I worked out how to get it back to the river, but now I can't carry this huge fish tank that I found.
A fish tank? Where'd that come from?
It was in one of the storage rooms, along with a bunch of kid stuff. I'm guessing they came from the library's children's section.
Juliet purses her lips, and I feel my heartbeat start to quicken like it always does when I'm in trouble.
Sorry if you didn't want me to go in there. I didn't know what that room was or what I was even looking for until I found the tank. I didn't look inside the locked room, though.
Juliet's frown deepens, but it doesn't look like she's angry. More like she's sad?
No need to apologize. You've done nothing wrong. Although...
I wait for her to finish her sentence, but it doesn't happen.
Although...
Never mind. It's nothing. Let's focus on helping our friend here first.
She reaches into the tank and scoops a handful of the water before dipping it back into the floating elemental. The creature seems to enjoy it, as far as I can tell.
Any ideas?
An idea comes to mind after you mentioned that storage room. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Sit back and relax as Juliet departs. I'm glad she didn't get upset after all, but something was definitely bugging her. I wonder what it was. After a couple minutes, I pick up the sound of something rolling down the stairs, stand up and poke my head out the door, and spot Juliet pulling a red wagon behind her. It has a rope handle and isn't very large, but it should have more than enough space for the tank.
Whoa, you're a genius!
With a smile, Juliet parks the wagon next to the bathtub.
As I said, You were the one who gave me the idea. Would you mind helping me lift it onto the wagon?
Sure.
We each take one end and carefully move the tank. Juliet also brought a number of tight straps to keep it in place. Once it's all set up, the elemental is safe and secure. I kneel down to get my face level with the glass.
How do you like that?
This time, the elemental shifts into the biggest grin I've seen.
Looks like we've got a winner.
Wonderful. If I watch the library, would you mind taking it back home? You're welcome to borrow an umbrella.
No problem. Be back soon.
Taking a towel and an umbrella for myself from the front door, I lead the elemental outside and onto the path. It's cloudy out and more gray than blue, but at least it's not raining right now. Still, I don't want to waste any time.
Is anywhere in the river okay?
The elemental bobs up and down.
I know just the place then.
The muddy path slows down the wagon a bit, but it isn't too bad. Once we go downhill, I have to be careful not to let go of it, to let it out of control. But other than that, it's pretty easy. From the bottom of the hill, it's not too far to the spot I had in mind. I noticed a small abandoned ramp into the river back when I was still living in the woods, but it wasn't useful to me then.
Don't know why anyone built this place, but it sure worked out for me.
Kneeling near the bottom of the ramp, I wrap the wagon's rope around my wrist to keep it from rolling away, then undo the straps on the tank. With both hands, I gently tilt the tank onto its side. The water and elemental spill out, flowing down the dirty concrete and into the river. The water begins to churn immediately, bubbling as if something huge is coming to the surface. A rushing sound echoes about the empty area before a torrent of water suddenly shoots upward like a fountain, arcing clear over me. I look up, I see the elemental shimmering within the water, catching the light from the sun. For one brief moment, the most beautiful, vivid rainbow I've ever seen hovers before me, so close that I could touch it. Then the water and elemental crash back into the river, and everything goes still. I smile, certain that I understand.
You're welcome.
Right. Interestingly, we have less choices now. Stop in at the Bell House, why not? An employee I don't recognize is working the counter today at the cafe. She asked for my name with a terse but polite smile and bags under her eyes. She must have come in early or something. I mumble my name for her absent-mindedly and walk off to find a seat. Fairy Kiss Killer for Mimo? Fairy Kiss Killer, Fairy Kiss Chiller for Mimo, oh my goodness. I glance around, but everyone seems firmly situated with their drinks and phones. Not a soul stirs at the order being called. When my eyes sweep over the employee, she's desperately trying to lock eyes with me. Huh? I'm Mimo? Feeling a little dazed, I take the drink from the employee, and she thanks me and nods. So, this is my drink after all. I look at the unfamiliar letters on the cup that most assuredly say Mimo. Mimo? That's a new one. All day it's been showering on and off, raindrops still pattering on the roof even now. At least the frogs outside are comfortable, happily croaking away in the dark night. To stave off the cold, I keep a warm blanket wrapped around me while sitting up and watching TV. I don't really understand all the complicated things the presenters are talking about, but it's interesting to see the reports from all over the world. My ears prick up as I hear someone walking up to the door, a series of 3 knocks gently ringing out against it. Always 3, from Juliet.
Yeah?
I'm making some tea. Would you care to join me? I can make some hot chocolate as well.
Sure. Be right down.
A warm drink sounds nice right now. Not wanting to leave my cozy blankets, I decide to hold it tightly around myself and waddle down the kitchen with it. The stairs prove a little difficult, but I manage. There are already 2 mugs sitting on the table when I arrive, and the kettle's already steaming. Oh my goodness, I cannot read today. As I take my seat, Juliet pours boiling water into each cup.
You knew what I was gonna say before you even asked me, huh?
I had a feeling, yes.
She pushes my mug across the table, and my hands peek out from my blanket to cradle it. Happy for the warmth, I hold the mug for a while before tasting the steaming hot chocolate inside.
A like the hot chocolate you make even better than the stuff at the Bell House.
Why, thank you. I'm happy to hear that. Although I imagine Aspen wouldn't be.
Do you ever go there? Now that I think about it, I'm surprised we've never gone together.
We haven't. Well, why don't we change that sometime then? Perhaps we can meet Aspen for breakfast there instead. It has been a while since I've stopped by.
Sure! I've never gotten any food from there. Only drinks.
You're in for a treat then. They serve delicious pastries and sandwiches. There's a particular one that I know Aspen enjoys, although I can't remember what it was.
That's okay. I'm sure I'll be fine with anything they have. I can't remember the last time I tried something that I didn't like.
That must come in handy when traveling the world so much, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Can't afford to be picky when you don't know the next time you'll even have options.
Have you found a favorite food? Or type of cuisine that you most enjoy?
Not really. Most of the time I just eat junk food or leftovers. Not really anything fancy.
Feeling Miho lived a very rough life. I mean, she tells us as such, but like trash panda levels of living.
Understandable. If there's ever a certain dish or meal that you'd like to try, it would be my pleasure to help make that happen. Perhaps we could even learn to cook it here at home, so you could have it any time.
Sure!
She's gonna get a taste for something really fancy. Like, oh yeah, I only, Juliet, I'm real big into beluga caviar now. I tossed that in the mental pile of if there's ever anything that Juliet's offered me. I know she means well, but at this point, I can't remember everything she said about that. The two of us continue to chat for a while, and I recount the full day's events with the elemental to Juliet, wrapping up my story at the point where I come home from the river.
Oops! That reminds me. I never put away the wagon. Let me know where it goes, and I can take it upstairs when I go back to my room.
Wagon? Oh, yes. Yes, of course.
Juliet quickly looks away, taking a sponge and busying herself cleaning some loose sugar off the counter, but it's obvious that something's off. I'm not sure what to do. It's so rare that Juliet's the one who seems uncomfortable. In fact, this is the only time I can think of. Other than when I first met her, of course, when I sort of tried to steal that painting.
By the way, who does all that stuff belong to? The wagon and the toys, that is. Were they part of the library children's section before or something?
No, they were personal possessions, not part of the library.
Oh, like from when you were a kid. I'm surprised you managed to keep them for that long then.
No, not my childhood.
Huh?
The sponge stops moving, Juliet's shoulders slumping as she gives up trying to work. I feel a little bad for making her act so oddly.
If you don't want to talk about it, that's totally fine. Sorry. I didn't know it was sensitive. I'm really, really sorry.
It's fine. You couldn't have known. Besides, perhaps it's only right that you know.
Know what?
She turns back towards me, taking a breath before she continues. Her eyes don't look at me, though. They're looking past me.
Do you remember when, several weeks ago, I told you that I met someone who changed my life? Someone who made me want to be a better person?
Yeah.
Well, her name, my daughter's name, is Cosette.
You have a daughter?
Yes, and she's been the biggest blessing in my many, many years of life. Although she's not of my own flesh and blood, She was my child. I found her on my doorstep one morning, tucked into a basket with a blanket and scarf around her. It was cold that morning, so very cold. When I opened my door and saw the silent bundle there, I feared that she was dead. But she was not. She was so very alive, and despite the cold, so very, very warm. She was barely a year old, if that. Yet she didn't cry. She could have been there all night for all I knew, but she never uttered a sound. I brought her inside, of course, just so she wouldn't freeze. Beyond that, I was panicked and confused. I'd never wanted a human child. I didn't even know how to raise one. To this day, I don't know why whoever abandoned her chose my doorstep to leave her on, of all places. But how wonderfully, impossibly lucky I was. Because she didn't cry, I thought she might be mute. But that wasn't the case. She had a great deal to say. And as she got older, she would talk and talk. Every word was like music, a melody to my ears only. I felt so fortunate, and so unprepared. I suddenly had the life and well-being of another in my own hands. Her future, her everything. It was a responsibility I had never asked for, and likely would have never asked for if my life hadn't changed that day. She grew and grew, from a curious baby to precocious child, then to a confident young lady, and finally to a lovely woman. I couldn't have been more proud as a mother. Every graduation, every breakup, every smile and tear changed my life. As my daughter, of course it would be true to say that I raised her, but it was mutual. She also made me into the person I am today.
Once Juliet finishes speaking, I let out a breath I don't remember holding. Just as when she'd first started speaking, her gaze is still fixed on the empty wall somewhere above my head. Just like when Aspen gets sucked into one of her books, I can tell that Juliet's mind is somewhere else entirely.
The moment that I resolved to raise her, I made a promise to myself and to her. A promise that I would do all in my power to make the world Cosette lived in, grew up in, a better one that I had experienced. That I would show her how to find the beauty and the joy in all things dark and terrible. In a sense, I ceased to exist as a single person. My life was no longer my own. It was tied, forever and always, to another.
So, all those toys and things.
Yes, the treasures and mementos of another life. Of happy days filled with laughter, of scraped knees and tummy aches, of heartbreak and homecomings. I keep them there as not simply a reminder, but a tribute to those times.
Wow. I would have never guessed any of that. I never knew you were a mom.
Her gaze returns to me, to the world that we're in now. She gives a little smile, but it looks fragile.
Well, I suppose it's not something I speak of very often.
Does she live here in Wellington? Could I meet her?
Juliet regards me with a strange look, similar to earlier with the elemental. It's not that she looks angry, but like she's thinking about something very hard. I'm trying to think how I want to say this. I debated whether or not I wanted to preface this scene with anything. And just like Juliet, I have to think very hard about that. I guess what I'll say is that we have to remember going into this, Miho is very naive. Despite being hundreds of years old, she does not understand people, or things about them, or some very basic things. So. I stare back, not sure what else to do or what I might have said wrong. Like always, her expression soon softens.
She is in Wellington, yes. A bit of a walk, but not too far. You can go in the morning if you'd like. It's been a little while since I have.
Sure, fine by me. I guess it is getting kind of late for a visit, huh?
It is indeed. Speaking of which, I actually have some business I must tend to myself. Will you be all right on your own, Miho?
Oh, yeah, of course. Don't worry about me.
Have a good night, then. See you in the morning.
See you. I'll be ready to go first thing.
As Juliet leaves, I watch her go. It might just be me, but it seems like she left in a hurry after saying all that. Maybe she and Cosette had an argument about something. Or maybe she just didn't want me to meet the other people in her life. I'm probably just imagining it. The way she talks about Cosette is so different from the way I've heard Juliet talk about anyone or anything else. I can tell she cares a lot about her. Hopefully it'll make more sense tomorrow, after I get to meet her. When I finally decide to go up to my room, I take the wagon back first, as promised. I have to pick it up and carry it to get it up the steps, but fortunately it's not that heavy, even with my blanket bunched up inside. It's a heavy blanket, if that would change anything. When I finally decide to head back up to my room, I take the wagon back first, as promised. Wow. I was like, that line seems familiar. Once I get to the second floor, I put it down and drag it the rest of the way to the storage room. After pushing the wagon into the empty spot, I take a proper look around, now that I actually know what this room contains. More than just toys, I also spot racks of clothes and stacks of books and all kinds of other belongings. The whole room is pretty packed. Slowly making my way back to the door, I carefully maneuver between a rocking horse and a dollhouse, taking care not to step on anything or knock it over. Taking one last peek around before I head to my own room, I get the feeling there's something missing from Cosette's childhood in here. Or there's nothing missing, rather. If it wasn't obvious, this is, the scene we're getting to is a very good one. I can't say for sure. It certainly seems like Juliet hasn't let anything go. The morning air is fresh and crisp, and plants around us look healthier for the drink last night. A handful of small puddles here and there are all that remains of yesterday's rain, likely to be completely dried up in a few hours. As I stand by the front door of the library, Juliet walks up beside me and unfolds her parasol, bringing it over her head.
Shall we depart? It's about a 30-minute walk from here, so perhaps we'll take a ride back once we're done.
Yep. Will you be okay in the sun with that?
Yes. It's still early enough that I don't need to worry too much.
Lead on, then.
Stepping out in the brilliant morning, I stretch and roll my shoulders. It's a nice day, not too cold and not too hot. As always, Juliet's steps are measured and even as she walks. Her parasol bobs with each step, making it look like she's wearing a big hat from this angle. I smile to myself at the image as I skip along beside her. Even with protection from the sun, it's rare to see Juliet out in the daytime.
So, I was wondering something. If your daughter lives so close, then why doesn't she come to visit more often? I've been here for a couple months now.
Although she clearly heard me, Juliet doesn't answer. Maybe it's too personal a question, because things are tense between them. I've never seen Juliet not answer one of my questions before, so I don't push it. Juliet remains quiet as we keep walking. That isn't unusual for her, but I still feel a little awkward.
Sorry if I shouldn't have asked that.
No, it's all right. You'll see when we get there, though.
Okay.
We head in a direction that I haven't explored before. We're in the same area as the gardens, but not quite the same spot. A massive green hill watches over us from one side, while trees blanket the other. So we're heading to the botanical gardens on the map previously. After crossing a small bridge that runs over the highway, we reach another beautiful area. Anyone familiar with Wellington knows where we are. The concrete path we walk along is lined with bushes and flowers. Sorry, my allergies are real bad today. I don't know why. There are a few houses peeking through the trees which ring the area, but most of the field is still covered in nature.
Whoa. Are we getting close?
Yes, we're very nearly there. This is Bolton Street Park.
She's pretty lucky to live in a place like this, huh?
Even as a child, Cosette had an affinity for the woods and trees.
I get that. I'll bet she would love to be able to turn into a badder fox.
I'm taken off guard by Juliet letting out a great laugh. I don't think I've ever seen her like this. A little giggle, or rarely a chuckle from time to time, sure, but never anything so relaxed and sincere. A grin spreads on my face just from watching her.
Yes, I think you're right about that.
There are only a handful of houses around the park, so I wonder which one is Cosette's. Time and time again, we walk on past the turns which lead to any of them. Just as I start to wonder where we're going, Juliet slowly comes to a stop. The main path forks into two here. The one on our left, a well-trodden dirt path. There's a sign, but I can't quite read the writing yet.
Everything okay? We're not lost, are we?
Heavens, no.
A number of tall trees shade the path we're on, giving enough protection for Juliet to slide her parasol shut. She takes a deep, silent breath, then smiles and gestures down the offshoot before us.
It's right this way. Just a little further.
Nodding, I follow again as she leads us onwards. Right away, I notice something's a little bit off. Juliet's steps are slower and a bit more uneven, like she doesn't want to get wherever we're going. After a few minutes of walking in silence, she takes one last turn off from the path we're on, leading up a small hill dotted with trees. Once we reach the crest, Juliet comes to a stop. Still confused, I stand up beside her.
Here we are.
Huh? I don't see... Oh.
In the shade of the trees is a gray stone monument. Its edges are rough and worn from time, but it's spotlessly clean. There are others like it nearby, practically identical. Words are carved into the stone, too small for me to read easily. I've never visited before, but I realize what this place is. I silently mouth the letters of the word at the top, even though I'm pretty sure I know what it's going to say. There's a C, then an O, and then an S. Cosette's grave is preserved perfectly. I'm sure Juliet wouldn't stand for anything else.
I'm... sorry. I didn't...
It's okay, Miho. I'm aware you didn't know. But... I wanted you to.
She turns back to the grave, gently running a hand over the curved stone.
My beautiful, precious daughter passed away years ago. Almost 2 decades by now. She lived a long, full life and spent her final moments with those she loved. The last words she told me, the last words she ever said to me.
Juliet's shoulders shake without a sound as I stand there helplessly. She shudders as she takes a deep breath.
Or that she couldn't have been happier.
What was she like?
She was so many things that it's almost impossible to answer. I think you would have liked her. I'm sure she would have loved you. She was adventurous and free, sometimes stubborn to a fault. Once her heart was set on something, there was no stopping her. Everything she did vividly, to the fullest. Even if the very laws of existence told her something was impossible, she would try anyway. She was endlessly kind, with compassion for every living thing, from the smallest insect to the largest, most ferocious beast. She saw the value in all of them.
She gives a small smile as she looks at me, even as tears well in her eyes. I gulp to try to force down my own emotions.
You should have seen her as a child. She would talk your ear off. Both of them, if you'd let her. There wasn't a single person near us who didn't know who she was. So open and free was she. That warmth and care. It was the core of her life. If she saw someone in need, she would rush to their aid. It just naturally came to her. If you or I see someone hurting, we may choose to help. For Cosette, it wasn't a choice. It was simply who she was. To know her was to adore her. Every day that went by, I was more and more proud of her. Those virtues never faded a bit. Even on her last day, she was worried for me more than anything. I promised her that I would...
Juliet sobs, dragging her hand across her face. All I can do is watch, my own emotions a storm that tosses me in all different directions. The pain in Juliet's shaky voice is enough to make my own breath tremble. But beyond that, there's something else. Something eating at me that I don't want to acknowledge. Juliet turns back towards the grave, taking a couple steps closer. Unfurling her parasol, she holds it over her shoulder like a shield, guarding herself against the sunlight. She's also able to stand a little straighter.
I promised her that I would live as she did, to honor her memory with kindness and with virtue and with compassion and patience for all. That I would ensure her legacy lived on in the many lives she had touched. It was only in the days that followed her passing, as I wandered lost and alone, that I truly began to understand how much she had saved my own life. The gift she gave me was something I'd never had before. Purpose. How very silly and irrelevant things such as wealth and prestige began to seem after that. Those were fleeting concepts, born of some misplaced need or desire. There was something that could be much greater. Something well beyond money and power. Love. As a word, it's difficult to understand. To hear the poets speak of it, there's nothing mightier and nothing softer. Love was either everything or it was nothing. It had always seemed so trite, so immature. An attempt to create meaning where there is none. And yet, I've found that the poets were right. They were so right. You and I, Miho, to be able to live on, unaffected by time's curse, must surely seem a blessing to some. But that time is meaningless without something to fill it. To those of us who walk alongside Father Time, rather than fleeing him, it's awfully lonely. When I first became a vampire, I told myself that I had no more need for humans, that I was beyond them. Now, I realize I was afraid. There's a simple contentment and joy that can only be found in experience and age, I've learned. Wisdom does not exclude humans, but to look on as once vibrant hair fades to grey, and as once strong hands soften their grips, as once treasured memories become distant, there is pain. To watch someone you love grow up is beautiful. To watch them grow old is to suffer. Cosette lived into her 80s. A good, long life for a human. Even as her flesh started to fail her, her mind never did. She was sharp as a sword and quick as a fox. For a human, there is no kinder, gentler end than that of old age. And every day, I'm thankful that Cosette was one of those lucky ones. To slip away peacefully and painlessly. As I held that soft, shaky hand for the last time, I wished desperately that I could trade places with her. I would have done anything to give her just one more day. But there was nothing to be done. Cosette passed on with no regrets, and a smile on her face. She lived as full a life as any human could live. And when she was gone, I was still there. My flesh not a day older than when I met her. It was then that I realized what a cruel gift immortality could be. What a slow, repetitive torture if I chose to let it. So for the sake of Cosette's memory, and of the promise I made, I swore that I would continue to live as I had not lived before. For virtue, for friendship, for others, for tomorrow. To die is human. To live is a privilege.
With absolute clarity, the storm inside me calms as I pass through its eye. There's a sense of finality in Juliet's words, which leaves them ringing in my ears as I stumble backwards without even thinking about it. To die is human. All humans. Cosette, someday Aspen, but also even mine. My person. Understanding hits me like an arrow to the heart, and I barely notice the look of surprise on Juliet's face as I transform, turning tail and fleeing into the forest. My person, the one I've searched for my entire life, is dead too. Long dead. No matter what happened after they left the forest, the nature of their human lifespan means they lived lifetimes ago, generations ago. As I run further and further away, one thought echoes above the others. All this time, all these years, all these decades, they've been for nothing. I dig my claws into the earth with every step, tearing at the roots and leaves. I do not know the name for the feeling pulling and tugging at me, the one that had taken over Juliet as we stood there. One I've heard of, but never felt until now. Grief. Every lie, every theft, every struggle and hardship, everything. For nothing. That word swirls in my head, a dying leaf drifting toward the ground, falling, and powerless to stop itself. Finally, I come to a stop, not even knowing where I am or for how long I ran. I just stop when I lose the will to run anymore, transforming onto my knees. Every decision I've ever made, every place I've ever gone, had all been in service of one dream. For time, I grew to rely on it. I did never even have to think or make a difficult decision for myself. Instead, it was like I had a path to follow, however long. But that path wasn't actually leading anywhere. All it did was take me far away and leave me on my own. Rising to my feet, I look around the area. Although the trees and slopes remind me of Mount Victoria, I don't recognize it at all. Juliet's nowhere to be seen. Sprawling sunlight means she couldn't join me here even if she wanted to, even if she found me. I wonder if she's looking. Juliet, who always seemed so calm and put together. Behind that mask, she was hiding all these feelings. What else don't I know about her? What else has she been keeping to herself? Is it just more pain? An ice-cold chill runs down my spine, making me shudder as I realize something else. She must have known, too, that my person was dead. She must have figured it out right away, and she never told me. Aspen, too. Suddenly, every pained look or topic change whenever I brought up Jianing made sense. They both knew and were hiding it from me all along. This whole time letting me go on and get my hopes up without ever stopping me or telling the truth. It was so simple, too, so obvious. If I just thought about it for a bit myself, I'd have realized that humans live and die much faster than my kind do. Sighing, I sit down in the grass, wrapping my arms around my knees. I mash one palm into my eyes to wipe away the tears that are there.
Stop crying, Miho.
With a few deep breaths, I manage to fight away the stinging pressure and keep myself from breaking down even more. I sigh again once I'm certain it won't turn into a sob. Now that the initial shock has worn off, the pain in my heart has gone from a dull stab, or from a sharp stab to a dull throb. Aside from pure survival instinct, death has always been distant and faceless to me. But now I have to look it in the eye. My time with Jianing was short, thousands of times shorter than the time I've spent looking for them since then. Still, it was all I had. Where do I even go from here? The sun is getting higher, so Juliet must have made her way home by now. She might even be waiting for me to come back. We both know I have to at some point. It's getting hotter for me, too. Shakily, I raise to my feet and look around again, actually trying to get my bearings. If I have to, I can just go back in the direction I came from until I find somewhere familiar. I start walking back towards the library, since it's the only place I have to go. I may think of it as a home for now, but I can't help but picture Juliet's sobbing face. Mortal or not, there has to come a time someday where we don't see each other, and that will be the end of our memories together. Or at least her memories of me. The same goes for Aspen, as mortal as Cosette. Aren't I just resigning myself to feeling this pain again someday, potentially even stronger? Maybe she was right, the other Gumiho. Maybe I don't belong anywhere. By the time I get back to the library, I'm exhausted from the walk and sun. I throw open the library door and go inside, walking past my empty seat at the front desk. Juliet's nowhere to be seen, only patrons. They've always managed just fine without me, though. Plodding up to my room, I grab my blanket from my bed and wrap it around myself before I lower myself to the floor. That's when the tears hit again, and this time I can't hold them back. Slouching onto my side, I don't even try, there's no point. As expected, in less than a minute, there's a sound at my door. 3 knocks. Always 3.
Miho? Is that you? Are you all right?
I don't respond. I don't even know if I want to see Juliet right now. She's part of this too, after all. She pauses outside for a moment, but a few seconds later, Juliet opens the door anyways.
Oh, Miho.
The pity in her voice tells me everything I need to know. I can only imagine what I must look like, covered in blankets and lying on the floor. Must look pathetic, childish. Must be how I always look to her.
Miho, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
Juliet trails off, still just inside the door. I can see her legs in cane, but not her face. I can picture the concern on it, though.
Didn't mean to what?
The words come out as a growl, surprising even myself. But I can't pretend, not now. She's let herself in here, she can deal with it. Her cane sways from side to side as she wrings her hands, almost knocking into the wall more than once.
Mean for you to put things together this way. Such a painful way. I wanted to...
So you did know.
I cut her off without thinking as she confirms my suspicions. With one arm, I push myself up, letting the blanket fall away from my face as I glare daggers at Juliet.
Pardon?
You knew.
Slowly, I rise to my feet. My head is pounding. I can hear my blood pumping as anger rushes through me, bubbling out like liquid magma.
All this time they've been dead, and you knew, didn't you? You probably knew from the first time I told you about them, right?
She stiffens and then Juliet sighs deeply. It's all anyone ever seems to do around here.
I did, yes.
Why? Why didn't you tell me?
Although tears are beginning to choke my voice again, I manage to shout out my question, my accusation.
I've been looking like such an idiot. I'm already an idiot compared to you and to Aspen. Every day I'm reminded of that. But this really takes the cake, doesn't it? I've been wasting my whole entire life over something everyone else can figure out right away.
Miho, it isn't like that.
Then why? Tell me why you didn't tell me sooner. Or Aspen. She knows too, right?
Juliet nods meekly. My eyes burn and my nose is running. My face hurts in every way possible.
We didn't know how.
Know how? What do you mean, know how?
I can't keep myself from shouting. I feel so stupid, so angry, and so sad.
Please, Miho, try to understand. We were still just getting to know you. You barely trusted Aspen or me. If we just told you that the person you were looking for was deceased, we didn't know how you'd take it. You might not even believe us, for one thing. Or perhaps it would give you cause to run away again. As the weeks went on, we wanted to, but it never seemed to be the right time. Neither of us wanted to be the one to, out of nowhere, bring your whole world crashing down. Not when you were trying so hard. You seemed so happy. It felt more cruel to ruin that in a way. I'm sorry, Miho. I truly am. It was wrong of me to let it go this long without saying anything, but believe me, I only hesitated out of love. Aspen and I both. We simply couldn't bring ourselves to break your heart that way.
Bad lot of good that did. Juliet sniffles and I have to look away. I don't want to see her cry again, not when I'm already like this. Stooping down to the floor, I pick up my blanket and wrap it around myself again. Even as I do, I can't think of how it's not really my blanket. It's Juliet, she just lets me use it, like everything else.
Go away.
To my relief, she doesn't try to argue, doesn't even say anything else. She just nods and silently leaves the room. The second the door shuts behind her, I collapse onto my bed, putting my pillow over my face and succumb to my grief. Everything hurts when I wake up, damp pillow still covering me. My face and head hurt from crying, and my body hurts from passing out in an uncomfortable position. Yo, that only gets worse the older you get, Miho. Although I guess it doesn't, since she's, immortal. I didn't even mean to fall asleep. Must have cried myself into it. The memories of yesterday didn't even give me a chance to wake up before they flood my brain, pulling a groan out of me in response. I don't want to get up. I don't want to leave my bed. What's even the point? Still, I know I have to. I have to see Aspen within the next few hours, and Juliet too, eventually. I don't know what to say, or even what I want to hear. As much as I just like to avoid everything and everyone, the rational part of me knows that I can't. Instead, my magic and bead force me to conform like always. Either get up, or be forgotten. It's not really much of a choice. I sluggishly get dressed and wipe down my face, which is still red from crying. I trot downstairs to where we'd normally be having breakfast. Except it's later than usual. There's food on the table for me, but it's long since cold. I can hear the sounds of conversation and movement that means the library's already open. Life goes on. With or without me. I cram down the slices of cold toast and browning apple without really tasting them, just knowing that I need the nourishment. Then I wander up to the front of the library where Juliet is seated in my spot at the desk. When she notices me approaching, I can see her struggle to decide how to greet me, uncertainty plain in her eyes. I can't decide either, so I just settle for a stiff nod.
Hey.
Good morning, Miho.
Her voice is awkwardly stilted. It seems out of place for Juliet. I gesture at the stack of books next to her and the half-filled checkout sheet.
You can go to bed. I can take over from here.
Juliet shakes her head, looking a little more confident in the motion.
No, it's all right. You're in no state to be working today. Let me handle it instead.
Really, it's fine.
The patron starts to approach the counter, a couple books in his hand. I start to reach for them, but Juliet stands up, blocking me off.
Good morning. All set to check out?
I let my hand fall to my side. The person checking out books looks a little confused, but settles on talking to Juliet instead of me. Fine, then. If she wants to, she can do it. She has that same practiced tone of voice when it comes to helping a stranger that Aspen does. Aspen calls it her customer service voice. To me, it's the same as how I'd sound when trying to deceive someone or get something out of them. The only difference is I'm not sure I could pull mine off now, like she can. Then again, it seems like Juliet must have always been good at hiding her feelings. Wordlessly, I turn around and step out from behind the desk, passing by the guest on my way out the door. From the corner of my eye, I can see Juliet watching me as I go, even as she deftly handles the checkout. The fresh air is an instant relief, and I gulp it in as I stretch out my arms, just basking in the sun for a moment. I start to walk to the Bell House because I need to see Aspen before it gets too late. Fortunately, we had a late breakfast yesterday, so I have a bit more leeway than usual. Okay, that's good. I was thinking about that as that scene started. I was like, did that? Thought that might have been a plot point, or plot hole, but it was not. I do my best to keep my head empty on the way there, because if I let myself think, it'll turn bad. So instead I focus on putting one foot in front of the other, and on paying the minimum amount of attention to my surroundings. Just enough to get me there. Aspen herself is working the counter when I enter the cafe, and she waves eagerly when she sees me.
Oh, Miho! I was just thinking of taking my break early to come see you. Juliet said you were feeling a little under the weather this morning.
I make my way up to the register, staring blankly at the menu. I could actually read some of it if I tried, but I'm not.
I can see what she means. Are you all right?
I shrug.
Yeah, I'm fine. Let me get,
The names of the different drinks that I like all swirl around in my head, but somehow picking one feels like an impossible challenge. Wasn't actually planning to stay or get something to drink, I just started ordering out of habit.
whatever you recommend.
Frowning, Aspen taps something into the machine. I reach for my wallet, but she waves a hand to stop me.
It's on me. Go sit down and I'll bring you something soon. Thanks.
Leaving her to that, I trudge to a booth and sit down, resting my head on my arms and closing my eyes. I could have just come inside and left again as soon as Aspen saw me, but I know that I wouldn't feel any better anywhere else I could choose to go. At least this way I get a free drink out of it. There you go. I don't open my eyes again until I hear the sound of Aspen setting a cup down in front of me before taking a seat herself.
Thanks. Again.
Sitting up, I have a taste of whatever it is Aspen brought me. Scalding hot and bitter.
What's in this? Coffee. What else? Espresso? You look like you need it.
Gingerly, I take another sip, bracing myself against the heat this time.
One of your recipes? No, I don't know who invented it, but it's been my go-to for years when I need a pick-me-up. Don't you feel more awake now?
The aftertaste lingers in my mouth, but I drink some more anyways.
Unfortunately. Then it's doing its job. You really do look a mess, though. Were you crying?
As soon as Aspen takes a second to look at my face, I see her take on that same look of concern as Juliet. I raise my cup to my lips again, just to hide myself.
Yeah?
There's an awful scraping sound as Aspen slides her chair a little closer to mine, taking one of my hands in hers. I pull away immediately.
Sorry, I should have asked first. What's wrong? Did I do something?
Her face starts to redden, and I already know what's coming next.
It's fine.
I don't know how to respond. So instead, I opt for a question that's been lingering on my mind.
Do you know who Cosette is? Cosette? No, I don't believe I know the name. Is she a friend of yours? No. Don't worry about it.
If Aspen doesn't know, I'm not going to be the one to tell her. Still, it doesn't surprise me in the slightest that Juliet never mentioned her before. Even the two of them are supposedly close friends. As for my human, though, may as well just get it out there. At least then we'll all be on the same page.
I found out my person is dead.
Although I've been sitting with that thought for hours now, it's the first time I've said the words out loud. To my own surprise, they come out as steady as everything else. At least I don't feel like I'm going to cry.
Oh.
Finally, I glance at Aspen herself. Just like Juliet, I can see her eyes widen and mouth drop as she tries to think of something more to say.
And you knew, didn't you?
Her hand toys uselessly with an abandoned straw wrapper on the table.
I suspected as much, yes.
I sigh, not surprised at all. I don't even have the energy to be that upset compared to when I was dealing with Juliet.
I'm sorry,
It's okay. Juliet already said it.
Well, I'm saying it too. I'm sorry. It seems you probably didn't find out in the best way. Not that there is a best way. That was why we were afraid to tell you. We didn't know how... Actually, I'm just going to stop talking.
Really? It's fine.
Cut her off flatly before she can start over apologizing. Being apologized to makes me uncomfortable, like an itch I can't scratch. Putting my chin in my hands, I look out the window to the sunny day outside. It's as nice as ever is here.
I just wish you would have told me.
In our reflection, I see Aspen nod.
If it makes you feel any better, we were going to, soon. We'd already decided, but not on how. I assume Juliet told you.
More or less, yeah. She said something that made me figure it out.
I see.
Both of them just accepted my being upset so easily. Neither of them tried to argue or anything, just apologized. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Just like I'm not sure if Aspen's words make me feel better or not. But also I have to ask what I'm getting out of doing this for myself, and to her and to Juliet. Sitting here quietly, stewing in my emotions. What felt like burning rage last night now feels less explosive. I do wish they'd been more honest with me, but they were both just trying to be nice. It's not like I haven't done the things they were afraid of before, like run away. When that's the case, is it really okay to still be upset with them? Sorting through complicated emotions is difficult. I like when things are straightforward, and I know to be sad or mad or something else. Right now, seeing how sad it's also made Juliet and now Aspen doesn't make me feel better either. If nothing else, I should at least tell them how I feel, or try to. Closing my eyes for a beat, I make my first real decision since leaving for Cosette's grave with Juliet yesterday.
Are you busy tonight? I want to talk with you and Juliet. Together.
She startles at the sound of my voice. I guess she didn't expect me to say anything else.
I'll be there. Just tell me when.
I don't know yet. I have to ask Juliet, but I'll have her let you know.
Okay, that works for me.
I stand up slowly and Aspen does the same. I can tell from the way she's still fidgety and nervous, though, that something's bothering her. There's a tiny pop as she snaps the paper straw wrapper in half.
Can you tell me one thing, though? Are you leaving?
She's really worried about that, isn't she? I feel a bit more confident about one thing as I shake my head.
No. I won't go anywhere.
So yeah, finally a little moment to breathe here before we get into the next scene. Again, I was not sure how to preface that. That is a very heavy segment. And I can say, as we've played a lot of games on stream, I've played a ton of them off stream. I think that is one of, if not the best vocal performances I've ever heard. From Juliet especially, in that scene. Just phenomenal. So I wanted to take a minute to acknowledge that. Well deserved. So, yeah. Again, before we get into this next scene, I just want to pause for a little bit, let that kind of percolate. The beauty of the story, like I said, isn't in those twists. You, as the viewer or the reader, if you're playing this yourself, you have more knowledge than Miho does. You are not as naive as her. It's very obvious from the start that there was someone else in Juliet's life at some point. As you start to get more details, first the painting, very clearly something there. And then as you start to get the children's clothes, it's really obvious that it was her daughter. And you can tell then the fact that, like, oh, why hasn't she been mentioned? You know it's coming before Miho does. And again, the big hint of, for those familiar with Wellington, you knew where they were going. Bolton Street Cemetery is right there on this map. It is connected to the Botanical Gardens. It is a small cemetery, one of the oldest in Wellington. So, again, if you were familiar with the city, as soon as they started approaching that, if the other context clues weren't enough for you, that might have been it. But yeah, the beauty of this story and why I like it so much isn't because it's all these crazy twists and turns that, oh, it's really keeping you on the edge of your seat. What keeps you on the edge of your seat is seeing how these characters react to these very real things. These very personal things for them. These are great character interactions and moments. And here's another one. After getting back to the library, I made the same request to Juliet about being able to talk together. Not only did she agree, she suggested that we go somewhere else, just for a change of pace. We shared a quiet taxi ride up to the Botanical Gardens, not far away from Cosette's grave. Neither of us tried to talk, which suited me fine. I spent the whole ride trying to think about what I wanted to say. I imagine Juliet did the same thing. Taxi driver drops us off as close to the entrance as possible, tipping his hat as thanks as Juliet pays him before driving away, leaving the two of us mostly alone. There are a few people around, but more of them are leaving than entering at this time of the evening. One of those people, a figure sitting on a bench, stands up and approaches us. When they step into the light, it turns out to be Aspen.
It's certainly a new feeling to be the one waiting, instead of waited for.
Hi, Aspen.
Good evening, Aspen. I hope we didn't keep you waiting for long.
No, not at all. Besides, I can hardly complain when it gives me an opportunity to catch up on some reading. I thought about exploring the gardens a little, but I wasn't sure I'd be able to find my way back out.
There are worse places to be lost, at least. Thank you for indulging my request to come here in the first place.
It was a good idea. Not to say the library's gotten boring, but...
Scandalous.
We never really go anywhere else?
I feel better now than I did this morning, at least enough to make a couple jokes. A lot of things still weigh heavily on my mind, but I'm determined not to just be an emotionless rock. It wouldn't help anyone.
Precisely. I've never been here before either, so I'm eager to see the gardens.
What? I don't think I've ever realized that line before. I played through this twice before. That's weird. Later on, we find out that Aspen lives like a block away from this. So it makes it even stranger. Anyway.
It's been a while since I've been here myself, but I believe I remember a nice spot I used to visit with.
Instead of finishing her sentence, Juliet simply begins walking. Her cane makes a steady click-click sound as it taps against the stone path. Aspen reads off some of the signs that we pass by, signs which I, of course, have never given a second glance at.
Stonebridge Gully. That sounds rather poetic. Perhaps I'll use it in a story sometime. Ah, Pine Hill Path too. Whoever named these gardens was having fun, weren't they?
Juliet still seems preoccupied, not ignoring us, but not seeming to pay much attention either. She does wait while Aspen pauses to read one of the big signs that talk about the gardens. She writes a little bit in her notebook, then scurries back to us.
Sorry, one of the photos there caught my eye and I wanted to take some notes for further research. I hadn't realized there was more to this park than just this one garden.
Really? Like what?
There's an old estate for one thing. Also another garden just for native plants. There's even a cemetery not far away that's apparently part of it.
Steady rhythm of Juliet's cane misses a beat, but she keeps walking. After a short uphill stroll, we reach our destination. A small brick path juts off the main road, leading to an overlook covered by a glass roof. There are a handful of benches around, but all of them unoccupied. Again, worth pointing out, this is, of course, a real place. This little glass gazebo. You can drop a pin right on it on Google Maps and get a view of the nice botanical gardens.
Would this do?
Oh, Juliet, it's breathtaking.
I have to agree. Aspen walks slowly to the edge of the overlook, pressing a hand against the glass as she looks out over the view. I stand beside her and do the same. We're higher up than I thought, with a good view of the rest of the botanical gardens from here. I even spot the main gate. Far across, over the same rolling green hills that I noticed a couple days ago tower over us. Though she smiles, Juliet doesn't join us, instead sitting down on one of the benches.
What do you think, Miho? How does it compare to some of the sights you've seen?
It's pretty nice. I like the view from up on Mount Victoria better, though.
Oh, it's been quite a while since I went up there. Perhaps I should see it myself sometime and compare.
You should. You can see the library from the top. I used to go up there to clear my head, before I started living at the library.
I'll be sure to invite you along, then.
She lingers for a moment more, gazing out at the darkening sky, before taking a seat at the bench across from Juliet. Only I stay standing, pacing back and forth. Despite the pleasant chatter just a moment ago, now that we're all here and settled, both Aspen and Juliet sit quietly but expectantly, waiting for me to speak first. Since I was the one who asked them to come here, it falls to me to start the conversation. But where to even begin? I've been thinking about that all day, and I've decided that maybe I should just start at the beginning. The very beginning.
I never told you anything about my person, right? About Changin.
They both shake their heads. Taking a deep breath and clearing my throat, I close my eyes and cast my mind back to the forest all those years ago.
I was just a regular fox back then. I don't know how old I was. Foxes don't think like that. All we know about is eating snacks and lying in the sun. That was all I really did, all day long. No hobbies or jobs or responsibilities. Just existing. I knew what humans were in the same way I knew what leopards and bears were. Big and scary and something to avoid. It was rare to see one in the forest, but it happened. Most of the time, they were noisy enough that you could hear them coming from far away and hide. That was the first thing that was different about my person, Changin. I was taking a nap in one of my favorite spots, an old log that had fallen over. Changin came all the way over and sat down before they woke me up. And when they did, I panicked. I ran and hid as fast as I could. I think they were surprised too. They didn't try to catch me or stop me. Instead, they kept their distance and tossed me a little bit of the meat they were eating. I didn't trust them and didn't know why they were sharing, but it smelled pretty good. So I grabbed the food and ran away, and eventually they left. When I went back to my log the next day, Changin showed up again too. I ran away again, but they still didn't chase me and let me come back on my own. We did the same thing the next day, and the next day, and the next. Then, one day, I was in a new part of the forest. I liked wandering around even as a fox. I wasn't paying attention to where I was going, when suddenly, it felt like my leg was on fire. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I'd walked right into a trap that a hunter left.
I couldn't move as much as I tried, and it's still the scariest thing that ever happened to me. I was sure I was gonna die. Finally, Changin showed up. At first, I thought they were there to finish me off. Instead, they were worried for me. They knelt down and got my foot out of the trap, and then wrapped it with a part of their shirt to stop it from bleeding. That was when I finally figured out they weren't going to hurt me. I kept going to the grove to see them, and they kept being there. I let them get close enough to touch me after that. Still, they didn't do it much. It was only to check on my leg and make sure it was healing okay. One day I went, and they were waiting like always, but they brought a lot more food than usual. And they gave it all to me, hardly eating anything themselves. After I was finished, we sat together for a while. They sat on my log, and I laid in the grass nearby. Finally, they got up like usual and set two things on the ground. One was a bag of food, the same as they had just given me. The other was a little paper scroll. They patted me on the head for the first and only time. Then, they left our grove. At the time, I didn't think that day was anything special, other than the extra snacks. But it was the last time I'd ever see them. When I came back the next day, they weren't there. I waited, just in case they were late, but they never showed up. The scroll they left and some of the food were still there. Other animals had taken a lot of the food, but they didn't want the paper. I took the scroll with me when I left. I didn't know what it was, but it was theirs, so it had to be important. My only option was to carry it in my mouth. I went back again the next day, expecting them to show up, but they never did. I don't know how many more days it took before I realized they weren't coming back. Once I did, it was all I could think about. I kept looking for them, but I couldn't find them, as much as I wanted to. I didn't even know why I wanted to see them so badly. Just that I did. While I was thinking about that, I started to choke. Something came out of nowhere and was stuck in my throat. Finally, I coughed it up. A bead. I'd never seen it before, and definitely never swallowed it. I left it and went back to my den, but it was waiting for me there too. No matter where I went, it was always waiting. So finally, I touched it with my nose. Everything after that happened so fast. 1 second I was there, just a normal fox. The next, I was in this new form, not sure how or why. Some things came to me naturally, like using my new body and walking on 2 feet, and even how to turn back into a fox. But I still thought like an animal and acted like one. I didn't know any words that I could even think with. I had to learn those, and all kinds of other human behaviors the hard way, after getting chased away from villages and strangers that I met. Over time, I learned how to hide and blend in, and steal, and just how to survive. I followed Jungin's scent all the way to the ocean. I'd never seen so much water, not even close. I had no idea how huge it was. I boarded a ship like Jungin had, not knowing that it would take me somewhere different than the one they took. And I've been looking for them ever since.
When I open my eyes again, they're heavy with tears, but this time I don't try to hide them. I didn't mean to talk for so long, but once I started remembering, everything else just came naturally. Turning to face Aspen and Juliet, I see that they're crying too.
Oh, Miho. They sound like they were a wonderful person.
I can see why you never stopped searching for them. They were truly special, weren't they?
Yeah, they really were.
remembering how much their hand felt on my head and the softness of their touch as they inspected my leg. Those thoughts hurt as much as the hunter's trap did, but also they make me smile too. I've often worried they might have forgotten me, but I don't think they did. They only knew me as a fox before I had any magic, so their memories should have stayed intact. Those days weren't long, but they were special. To me, and I hope to Jiangning too. I don't want to let them become painful memories. I want to smile when I think about them.
Anyway, I'm sorry for getting so mad at you yesterday, Juliet. And for how I acted this morning with you, Aspen. I know that you both just wanted to keep me from getting hurt. But that's another thing, too. It feels like you're always looking after me, or taking care of me. There are lots of things I'm still learning, but I'm not weak. I've taken care of myself for a long time, you know. So, I don't want it to be like that anymore. I want you to be honest with me from now on, both of you. Even if it's something that would make me sad or angry. I promise that I won't run away without saying anything. I won't just disappear no matter what happens. Because if we're really friends, then we should trust each other, right? That's one of the things I've learned.
Having said everything I wanted to, I finally sit down, taking a spot between the two of them, just like at breakfast every morning. For a second, the three of us sit there quietly. Then Juliet begins to speak.
I hear what you say, Miho. And I agree. You're not the only one still learning things, you know? I have a long way to go too. For years, I felt it for the best to remain open, but guarded. If I maintained a comfortable distance, even from those I call my dearest friends, then I would be protecting myself. By never getting to know anyone too well, by withholding any meaningful details of my life, I thought to avoid the pain of loss again. But all I've done is keep myself from experiencing that joy of companionship again, while even causing hurt to others. I'm not too experienced when it comes to being honest to myself. Or perhaps only honest to a point. But you're right, Miho. That isn't how it should be. From here on out, I'll endeavor to be more open, more real, with both of you. For myself, and for you.
Juliet looks in our direction, but in particular at Aspen right now.
As such, Aspen, there's something that I'd like to tell you.
She begins telling Aspen about Cosette, in much the same way she told me yesterday. I sit quietly and think about what she said. Hearing Juliet describe herself reminds me of me. In the end, we've both always been running away, haven't we? Despite how perfect and put together Juliet's always seemed, she's actually been struggling just as much. She was just better at hiding it than me. As Juliet recounts the vows she made in honor of Cosette, I see Aspen is listening with rapt attention, like when she gets really absorbed in one of her books. When Juliet finishes her story, both of them have to wipe their eyes. Aspen rummages around in her bag and pulls out a small pack of tissues, offering one to Juliet before noisily blowing her nose and wiping her eyes.
God, that's certainly a lot to take in. Thank you for telling me, though. Cosette sounds like she was a wonderful person, just like Jiangning. I wish I could have met her.
I wish you could have as well. She would have had endless stories to recount, and I know she would have loved to share them.
As for all the other stuff, first of all, I promise, to both of you, I want us to be truly friends as well. I don't have anything quite so dramatic in my past, but I certainly know how it feels to be performative. I can hardly fault you for curating your self-image when I do the same thing. It's kind of funny, actually, and a little scary to hear you talk about Cosette and Zhongyin. Because, as someone who will one day be past tense, I often wonder about how I'll be remembered when I'm gone. Not that I expect that to be any time soon, but still, I hope that someone speaks of me just as fondly someday. There will be more than enough time for me to worry about that in the future, though. Right now, I'm glad we had this conversation. It was worth the near panic attack I had earlier, wondering what would be said tonight.
Me too. I still have a lot to think about, and I'm still sad. But I don't want to be sad forever. I know it's not what they would have wanted for me either. But I do know that I'm lucky I met you two, and that you're my friends.
Oop, sorry. Got a notification on my phone, panicked, and hit the spacebar. I think there's a log, right? Oh, there sure is. Listen to this.
But I don't want to be sad forever. I know it's not what they would have wanted for me either. But I do know that I'm lucky I met you two, and that you're my friends. I wanted to say like that.
My cheeks burn from saying something like that out loud, for the first time ever. But I liked saying it, because it's true. Although I'd already made up my mind to stay, it's sitting here in the middle of the gardens that I know I've made the right decision. For all the doubts I had, all the struggles, I'm thankful that it happened, and I can finally admit that to myself. Maybe it won't turn out the way I expected, but for once, I'm content with my life right now.
Well said. And don't worry, Miho. We're not going anywhere.
Even if it's not always perfect, it doesn't need to be. Just like Juliet.
Oh, Miho, I'm glad too. The first time you stepped into the Bell House was one of the luckiest days of my life.
All I have to do is keep trying, like Aspen. So maybe another first time would be appropriate. Hopping up from the bench, I grab Aspen's hand and Juliet's hand and pull them to their feet too. Then, spreading my arms as wide as I can, I pull them both into a hug. Without hesitation, I feel them embrace me in return. From that first day at the cafe, all the way to now, it's chilly out here in the gardens, in the cool evening air, but it's warm in Aspen and Juliet's arms, and I smile to myself, and to them, and to anyone who may be watching.
Mine too.
After spending a bit more time walking around the gardens last night, Juliet and I went back to the library, and Aspen took a bus back to her apartment. Once we got back, I fell asleep almost immediately, my brain finally getting some relief from all the emotions of the last few days. In the morning, once I go downstairs for breakfast, it's pleasantly familiar. Toast, eggs, and fruit like always, and conversation about books and work in Wellington. After cleaning up, but before Aspen departs, Juliet clears her throat.
By the way, Aspen, I do believe this weekend is a special occasion. Am I correct?
I had been trying to ignore that until now, but yes.
Wait, what? What happens this weekend?
This Friday is my birthday. A brutal reminder that, like we just discussed, time won't wait for me.
Whoa! Humans have parties for that, right? Are you gonna have a party?
No, I'm not turning 12.
How old are you turning?
Not 12.
I thought parties were a thing you got to do your whole life.
Nah, that's about when they stop.
That's not fair that only 12-year-olds get to have them.
It's not like that. They're just one of those things that you grow out of.
Why?
Why what?
Why do you grow out of them?
Her brow gets some more creases, like she's trying to explain this as much to herself as to me.
It's just part of being an adult. You get older and older and you reach the real world and then you don't feel like having a party, I suppose. When you're young, it's exciting getting older because there's so much you can't do as a child. Once you're an adult, you realize that what you thought adult life would be like isn't real. So instead of being excited that there's cake and ice cream, you start worrying about how many calories are in each.
What's a calorie?
Never mind.
You know, Miho has a point.
She does?
I do!
You're never too old to have fun, as you both went out of your way to remind me. 25 can be just as much a reason to celebrate as 5.
I suppose you're right. For the record, I'm only turning 24, thank you very much. Still, I'm not the partying type. Plus, I told my parents I'd go visit them this weekend. Just for a day, mind. I'll be back well before 24 hours have passed.
That's wonderful. I'm sure they'll be overjoyed to see you.
I'm sure they will be, at least for a little while. I still wouldn't want to stay for more than a weekend, even without Miho to keep in mind. Longer than that, and my mum and I would probably go crazy. I'm not leaving Welly until late Saturday evening, though. Would you mind going with me to the bus stop on that day, Miho? Just to be extra safe.
Yeah, of course.
Even without a party, would you let us treat you to dinner on Friday evening? We can go wherever you like.
That would be nice, thank you. No gifts, though. It won't be a party.
That's easy, because they wouldn't know what to get you anyway. Where do you want to go?
I'm not sure yet, but I'll let you two know. Maybe you can come over on Friday evening, and we'll go from there.
Come over? Where?
To my apartment? I do have my own place to live, you know. And, well, it isn't anything special, but I felt I should at least let you two see it. Only if you want to.
There's the big twist. Aspen can afford an apartment on a barista salary.
Of course I want to!
I mean it. It's the definition of average. I'm not even sure if it can fit 3 people.
I lived in a dirt hole for most of my life. I can handle anything.
Good point. You'll feel right at home then.
I'd love to come visit as well. Thank you for the invitation.
Great. I'll clean up and make sure the cats are on their best behavior. It's been quite a while since we've had company.
I can't wait!
3 of us chit-chat for a little bit longer until it's time for us all to split up for the day.
Miho, do you have any plans for the day?
Not yet. Why?
I was planning to go see a movie soon. Would you like to come with me? You're more than welcome to, of course, Juliet, but I imagine it's rather late for you.
Unfortunately so. I'll be up a while longer, but I wouldn't be able to make it through an entire movie. I hope that you enjoy it, though.
I understand. Miho? It's fine if you don't want to come along, but the showing starts in an hour, so we'd need to leave soon. I prefer to get there before it's crowded.
Hmm.
A choice. And this is where we will be ending. Slightly shorter stream because this was an intense one. Obviously, I knew this was coming, and I've been trying to plan them around certain moments so we're not left with major cliffhangers. In this case, we will be left with one, though. This is not a major choice, though, I can say. It's literally just a small scene. But we will leave it here, nonetheless. the major choice is coming up rather soon, and I want to make sure that there's plenty of time to get through that segment. So this is where we'll be ending it. Yeah, again, this was one of the big moments in this game. We got through it. I was unsure how that was going to go. Again, just such a superbly well-acted scenes by everyone involved. But especially Juliet, that is just... Whew. There was some real pain in her voice doing that. But pride as well. And that's a hard thing to pull off. And she nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. And Miho, again, with the just rage and sadness and everything. That's very, very well done. So, we'll leave it there and pick this up at a later date. But yeah, it remains. Please be happy. Even if this stream maybe wasn't. I'm still obviously enjoying this game, and whether you're here live or you watch this VOD later on down the road, I hope you enjoy it too. Until next time, have a good one, and maybe in the meantime, like I said, you can go on Google Maps, drop some pins around Wellington, the Botanical Gardens. You can walk the exact same path that Juliet does to take Miho to Cosette's grave in the Bolton Street Cemetery. Fascinating thing to do, of course, if you're in New Zealand. Take a little walk yourself. Anyway, until next time, have a good one.